Let's take a minute though, because it's the struggles of, you actually take a little time on the struggles of like K through 12 children as well. What are some of the unique struggles of undocumented children from age K to 12, especially kind of on the younger side?
Well, this is a really good question, because a lot of the narrative around this group, particularly very high-achieving dreamers, is that these young people are really blocked from access to college and good jobs, and these are really big issues. But this is not the entirety of their story. For these young people, their lives are framed by a constellation of processes. So I delve into what it means to live in a family that's low income, what it means to live in a household with at least one parent who's undocumented, what it means to see friends move forward while they stay stuck, and what it means to have to work and to have to drive, knowing that you have to break the law and knowing that you could be apprehended all the time, looking over your shoulder. The school experience, the K through 12 experience for these young people, this is a very kind of under-discussed issue, and that is that many of these young people, particularly those who live in urban areas, are going to schools, very large, segregated urban public schools. The schools in Los Angeles where my study took place is the perfect example. Many of my respondents went to schools where their class sizes, the student-to-teacher ratios, were upwards of 40-1. Where the student-to-counselor ratio was upwards of 950-1. California has the largest student-to-counselor ratio in the country. The national average is about 477-1. So for those young people who don't have access to specialized classes like AP or honors classes, or smaller programs like International Baccalaureate, those who are not high achievers, those who don't get into these specialized programs and are in kind of smaller learning environments, end up having to contend with larger classes, with unequal access to counselors and other school personnel. And so, as a result, for many of these young people who are in these less than advantageous positions within their schools, many of them don't have the opportunities to form trusting relationships with teachers or other adults in their schools. And as a result, at this really critical turning point, as they transition to illegality, as one of my respondents very poignantly said, as they wake up to a nightmare, they find themselves unable to have conversations with adults in their life that they trust. And as a result, many of these young people end up falling through the cracks. They become frustrated and disillusioned. They don't see their future very clearly in front of them. And so many of them end up leaving schools and not making the important transition from high school to college, and as a result, moving directly to an adult world where most of what they need to do requires breaking the law, entering the low-wage labor force, driving without a driver's license, and really trying to get by. And so, for many of these young people, this transition is a transition that is very difficult and very hard on their minds and also on their bodies.
You write, I mean, this is all connected to this, but you write that the illegality becomes something you call a master status. What exactly does that mean?
Yeah, so this master status concept is an old sociological concept that really says that one particular status, and in this case it's illegality, overwhelms or trumps all other experiences, all other statuses, and all other achievements. We could look at this as a binding constraint. So a lead weight, if you will, that eventually pulls you down. So no matter how fast one comes out of the gate, no matter what one's advantage might be initially, in high school, for example, that over time, that one's undocumented status brings them down. And so we can look at some of my respondents. So Flor, for example, one of that I call an early exiter, who left school early. At 14 years old, she started working. She started in a cleaning business with her parents. She had major responsibilities to her family, and ended up leaving school before she graduated from high school. Then there are others like Esperanza, who did very well in high school. She was a salutatorian of her class. She was involved in cross country on the school's debate team. She had a whole network of support. But ultimately for her, as she moved through college, had a lot of difficulty in college, and then finishing, after many bumps along the way, finishing college, and 2-3 years out from college, she ends up in the same place as young people like Flor, with a college degree and her undocumented status. She was only eligible to work in places like restaurants, factories, call centers. And so you see that in the kind of early transition between young people like Flor and Esperanza, there's a great deal of divergence in high school. But over time, as these young people move into their mid to late 20s, their trajectories converge. And young people, even those with college degrees, those even in my study, those who had gone on to master's programs, to law school, to teaching credential programs, had the same narrowly circumscribed range of options as those who had left school much earlier.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about this, and it also seems, I don't know how to, especially cruel, right? Where you have these children who, again, are just kids, and you know, they're K through 12 getting the same education, like you said earlier, saying the Pledge of Allegiance, they're watching the Power Rangers, they're doing everything every other kids are doing, and even those who, and there's plenty of plenty of problems with our schools and like not having good paying jobs for everybody, so that like ignoring all those like kind of core horrible problems that we have there. But even the kids who do manage to be really high achievers, it's so interesting that and just again heartbreaking that even the ones who are following the air quotes American dream on this get the door slammed in their face because of their status, when they really are just busting their butts and doing everything right. And I don't mean to disparage any of the other kids, because I want to get into that too. But it's especially just insane that happens to such highest achieving students as well.
Well, what I found out in this book and through this very kind of long longitudinal study is that for many young people, the American dream, as I mentioned earlier, for a lot of them is kind of awakening to a nightmare.
Yeah.
This is for many of these young people, they went to schools where their teachers encouraged them to work hard and to dream boldly. That if they played by the rules, that if they worked hard enough, that if they dreamed boldly enough, that there would be something for them. These are young people who look at themselves and their parents, and compared to their parents, they have levels of education that far exceed their mom and their dad. They speak English with much greater fluency. They have grown roots through connections with teachers, through their community, but ultimately, at a really critical time in their lives, they find themselves on the outside looking in. And for many of them, their response is that this is a very kind of cruel trick, that they kind of grow up with positive messages, but they're ultimately not able to realize these dreams.